So as I said, I don't usually do interviews this way, but you have a striking stare, sir, that I suppose has went through many opponents when you were quite possibly the greatest Australian heavyweight to have ever existed, in my opinion. Can you tell me a bit about your history with boxing, sir?
Well, it goes back a long time. Many years ago, my dad used to do a bit of fighting. Like I'm talking back in the 50s, and he could handle himself pretty good. And he used to be the president of the Redcliffe Youth Club, which many people didn't know about, but right down at Woody Point on the corner there, that hall used to be the Redcliffe Youth Club, and Dad was the president, and he was the instructor for everything. Boxing, gymnastics, wrestling, judo, mate, he could handle his hand at everything. And yeah, he's pretty good at it. So yeah, anyone that used to come down there and wanted to do a bit of boxing, I was always thrown in with them, because I could hold my hands up, and Dad reckoned that was pretty good. So the problem with it was...
well, when it comes to holding your hands up, sir, you held them up, and as I said, you have the reputation of being one of the best. What did it take to do that?
Well, that's
what
where...
is the spirit? Where is the spirit? What was the spirit? What was the drive?
Well, the drive come, and it was a bit hard for me because my dad passed away in 1970 and I was only 16, and I would have loved to have seen him, and I would have loved to have seen him see me have a fight. I never started fighting. I actually went down to Bunga's, and Bunga was my best mate. He's still my best mate, and we've been mates since grade 3 at primary school, so we've been around a bit. He's a year younger than me, but I was kept down in primary school, so we sort of made it up from there. So Bungy, he took me down and introduced me to Barry Parnell at the Redcliffe PCYC in 1971. And I was down there for 3 months, 3 nights a week, and Barry said to me, "Would you be interested in having a fight?" And I said, "Oh, well, do you think I'm good enough?" And he said, "We'll have to start training." And I thought, what have I been doing for 3 months?
Yeah.
And he said, "No, 5 nights a week, if not 6. And he said, "We'll get serious." So from that day on, I did, and Barry took me under his wing, and yeah, he was the greatest influence I ever had, mainly for footwork and hands. Like you sort, and you see blokes today, and I've been to a lot of fights since. The problem being is, mate, they all think they can fight, but mate, they don't. Their hands are down here. They're all over the shop. You know, get them up and hold them tight. This hand never leaves the side of your chin. This one stays here. You know, like you just got to do it. And when you throw them, you look right along your shoulder. And Barry, as always, mate, I can still remember one night at the gym there. I left at 12:05. I started at 6:30, and I learned how to throw a left hook that night. And that was just how it was with Barry. So, yeah, mate, it was dedication. I wanted to be the best at what I could do, and Barry was the best at doing it, and he got the best out of you.
But what about you on an individual basis? You're a very hard-working man. You have been your whole entire life. And also, as a fighter, you were a pretty hard-working fighter as well, were you not? You got a little bit. You ended up with some championships and a very heavy reputation as one of the best heavyweights in the history of Australia. So, you know, on a personal level, how did you manage to achieve such greatness, sir?
I think it was just dedication. That like I said, I wanted to be the best as I could be. And Barry always said to me, like, no one else can help you once you're in there, so you have to do it yourself. So in saying that, I used to train hard, rain, hail or shine. I used to road run 3 mile every morning before I went to work. I used to ride a push bike 3 mile to work, and I had to be there by 6:45 to have the truck ready for the bosses to drive out. So, and then I'd do a 10-hour day, and then I would ride home, and then I would go down and train 2 hours of a night. And that was for the first 3 years until I got a car. So yeah, it's a big thing. I wanted to do it mainly for myself. I wanted to do it a lot for mum and dad, mainly for me dad because he showed me first up, but he wasn't around, and I wanted to prove to myself that I could be as good as I could be. I was fortunate enough to win the heavyweight title of Australia 5 years. I had 46 fights for 39 wins. I held a bronze medal and a gold medal at the Oceania titles.
Okay, Mal, so what was the hardest fight you ever had in your whole entire life?
Well, in the ring, yeah, I fought a bloke, and it's the only time the Australasian title has ever been put on the line. I was the reigning heavyweight champion of Australia. George Stankovic from New Zealand was the reigning heavyweight champion in New Zealand, and they matched us up for the main prelim to Tony Mundine and Gary Summerfield back in 1979. 3 3-minute rounds. First round, 3 judges, 20 points all. Second round, 3 judges, 20 points all. Third round, 3 judges, 20 points all with a plus sign to him. I lost on a split decision by 1 punch. I've got a mate over in New Zealand that sent me a letter, and he said that must have been some fight. He said because George Stankovic, he said, mate, he come home, he is bodily bruised, he spent 3 days in hospital. I thought to myself, well, I won because I only spent 1 day in hospital. So I took that as a win. But mate, he was one of the hardest fights and toughest blokes I ever fought.
There's been some talk in the last couple of days with the fellas. They're saying that really it isn't a fight unless your opponent is somebody who is really a challenge. You really got to worry about him taking you down, never taking your opponent for granted. What about what's your killer instinct when it came to you in the ring, you actually being in the moment and connecting and doing what you did with those guys, because you were like, I suppose, like a leopard in some ways.
Yeah, that was one thing that I had up to my advantage. I was credited as being very fast for a heavyweight. So, and I used to use that to my advantage. I had 20 knockouts in my career, and only one of them was a direct 1-punch knockout. The rest were 7, 8, 9, 10 punches consecutively, bang, 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 that their mind was blurred, they didn't know where they were coming from, they couldn't get up. And that was the killer instinct, that I didn't back off. And I was always super fit, and I suppose pretty tough with it.
Okay, so who are the fighters that influenced you as a heavyweight when you were coming up? The classical fighters that influenced you and your style?
Oh mate, I'm the greatest, always the greatest, wouldn't be any better than anyone else, but Muhammad Ali was the best man. I sparred a lot of rounds with Tony Mundine. I believe him one of Australia's greatest fighters, and mate, he could hit both hands. He was a great man and a gentleman with it. Hector Thompson, pound for pound, one of the greatest body punchers in the world. He was a great fighter. I liked Sugar Ray Leonard. He was another great fighter. Robert Durand, he was another great fighter. But pound for pound, the greatest fighter ever to hold a pair of gloves on was Muhammad Ali, and being a heavyweight, he was my idol.
Can you put your hands up to the camera for me so I can wait? Okay, so you, okay. So this is my hand and this is his hand. So as you can see, as I always tell people, Mal Challenor has a hand double the size of most men, and I've got a big size hand. He's got a huge hand. I think probably the biggest hands that I've ever seen on a man in my whole entire life, Mal.
No, mate.
So I think a few people must have felt the sting on that one.
Yeah, mate, I was fortunate. Mate, I tell everyone, being a good fighter was part of it, but being the best at what you can do was the best part of it. And being fit, tough, and a bit of experience as I got along, so that helped as well.
Well, I was reviewing your fight, your rounds with Hector Thompson the other day. I rewatched it with Bunga at his place, mate, and I I was just like, as I said, it was like watching a leopard. It wasn't like watching a human being. Like when you were in there and you were rolling, you had just this animal killer instinct in you when you were in the ring, and you were fast and big. I mean, you're scary. It's just scary to watch you. Really scary.
Well, mate, and people don't understand that either. When I was fighting, was heavyweight. There was no super heavyweight. So out of 46 fights, now it might seem impossible, but I only fought 6 blokes smaller than me. Right? So 40 fighters were bigger than me. Now I used to go 6'4", 14 stone 4 to 14 stone 6, depending. That 14 stone 6 pound, right? The biggest bloke I ever fought, Bunger actually come down, he named him Gigantor. He was 6'7.5", 19 stone 8 3/4 pound, and not an ounce of fat on the man. After the fight, they measured around my leg here, and it was smaller than his arm here. He was just a gigantic man. But like 19 stone, 18 stone, 16 stone 6, 17 stone. Like, and I'm 14 stone. And these blokes are 6'7", 6'8", 6'9", you know, like, they're huge. And it often comes back to sort of remind me a few times, my last fight, I'd been away for 10 years from Barry. I was still doing a bit of training when I'd done a trip around Australia. And I come back and I went down to see Barry and I said, "How you going, mate?" He said, "Oh, good." He said, "We've got the state titles on out Deception Bay in a month's time." I said, "Oh, what big blokes around?" He said, "Well, you wouldn't make heavyweight now." He said, "You'd be super heavyweight." And I said, "Oh, well, don't matter." I said, "Who's around?" He said, "Oh, there's a big Kiwi doing a bit of spruiking. He's had 4 fights for 4 knockout wins in the first round. He's going to win the Queensland title unopposed because no one's game to fight him." I said, "You're kidding." Anyway, that was a month before the state titles. I went back down the next week and said to Barry, he said, "Oh, your big mate had a fight on the weekend. He's had 5 fights for 5 knockout wins in the first round. Now he's talking about winning the Australian title unopposed because no one's game to fight him." I said, "You're kidding." I said, "I'd won 7 state titles for Queensland and I had to fight for every one of them." I said, "Tell him I'll fight him." I was 132 kilos. I went from 132 kilos to 110 kilos in 3 weeks. I trained hard, I did everything that I used to do. Anyway, still haven't seen this bloke. 19-year-old, 108 kilos, 6'8". As he stepped in the ring, I said to Barry, "What the bloody hell did you let me in here for? Have a look at this bastard. He's 19-year-old, I'm 35. He's 6'8" and I'm 6'4". I'm 35 years old and I'm thinking, holy Christ. Anyway, first round he punched piss and pick handles out of me, but he couldn't put me away. I was too tough for him. Second round, she was all over. I stopped him in the second round. So I thought, well, pretty good way to retire. So I hung my gloves up with that bout.
Okay, so the spirit and the determination and the stability that you've had in your life as a citizen, as a father, as a parent, and as a human being, aside from a fighter, what is the most important qualities that you think a man needs to possess in his life to be to do the best for those around him?
Oh, mate, there's quite a few things, and now that I'm a family man, I've got 3 beautiful kids and a lovely wife. First and foremost, you must stand up for yourself. Secondly, you must protect your wife and your family. And thirdly, you must do the best for yourself and your family that you can do, because back in my day, society has changed to what it is today. With the drugs and the shit that is around at the moment, mate, I fear no man. I really don't. But today, I wouldn't walk down the main street of Redcliffe Friday or Saturday night. It's not the one bloke you're fighting. It's the 3rd and 4th bloke that runs in behind you with a knife or a bloody hammer or anything. You know, you have no idea. Like, I've been hit with a pail and I've been hit with a brick. Mate, it's just crap. And I think it's today's society with the amount of drugs that are around that has caused it.
So have you been you feel like you've been a good father to your children?
I've tried. I've been a hard man, I know that, on the boys when they were first growing up. But to my credit and to their credit, they've grown up good family men themselves now. My eldest boy has a beautiful little daughter, Chloe Violet, that's John and Jess. And my second boy, Scott, he's got Cody John and little Ruby with Amy. And yeah, beautiful couples.
Okay, so what could you tell me about Mark Hammer Dixon?
Well, I've known Mark for a long time through Bunga's family, but mate, I lost contact with him when I did go away, but he is, to me, is a gentleman and a scholar. He's a very tough man, he's a very brave man, and now that he's taken over the reins with the gym side of it, it's a pleasure to work with him. And I believe that he's a good mate, and to call a good mate, you don't get many of them through your lifetime, and I believe he is a good mate of mine, and I'd like to think that he thinks the same of me. So, yeah, mate, I have a lot of respect for Mark.
Hey, Dave, there's an interesting story that I think you'd find fascinating with Mel. Years ago, this is around the time the trial was on for Lindy Chamberlain, and Mel was up in the Territory, and they sent a film crew up there to do a bit of a story on Mel with his dogs. You ever listen to this? This is fascinating.
Okay.
Well, I arrived in the Territory in 1983. I had two dogs. I had three dogs, but the main two dogs I had were Jaws and Bronco, father and son. Jaws was a 7/8 Bull Terrier 1/8 Staghound, and Bronco was an 85-pound Bull Terrier Boxer Staghound. And it was just after I arrived there when all this kerfuffle came out about the child being taken by a dingo. Now, a dingo is I've never seen one in my whole lifetime as big as Bronco, remembering 85 pound. I was out at good friends of mine, and there's a bit of a poem about Billy Hayes from the Northern Territory, the buck jump rider. Well, Jim and Gail Hayes from Undulia Station, I got to know them very well and became close friends with them. And we done this out on their property, Undulia Station. It was an experiment like I thought would test the viability of what the dingo was supposed to do. Now, the dingo was only half the size of Bronco, right? So we shot a roo and we cut his back leg off and scaled it, put it on the scales and weighed to the weight of what the baby was. I can't remember what it was, but we weighed it to the exact ounce, right? I didn't feed my dogs for 3 days, so they were pretty toothy, right? I threw the leg out, and Jules picked it up and he took off. I kept Bronco there. Jules picked it up and he ran away with it, carrying it, and he carried it. Now, this dingo was supposed to carry it at 300 metres, right, before there was any track. Well, they never found a track, that's the thing. Supposed to have gone 300 metres before they found the clothing, right? Jules, 65-pound Bull Terrier Staghound, and very strong, he carried it for 51 metres. 51 metres before he dragged it. He dragged it another 100 metres, but he could only carry it up with his head up for 51 metres, right? So that's as far as he could go. So then I let Bronco out and I threw him the other leg, exactly the same weight, exactly the same. And I let Jaws go after he'd finished so he could chase Bronco. Bronco took it, he carried it for 75 metres. 75 metres. Now he is 85-pound Bull Terrier Staghound Boxer. Twice as strong as Jaws. 85 metres he carried it, and then he dragged it another 100 metres again, right? But he dragged it. Now you tell me, a dingo half the size is supposed to carry this baby, legs and arms, not touching the ground for 300 metres. What a load of crap.
So that says to you, essentially your take on the Lindy Chamberlain case is?
That someone had something to do with it.